This story is titled, Parents Didn't Notice That I Moved to Another State. They were busy with my golden child brother and now, after they found out I am rich, they are calling to reconcile. Hey there. We put a lot of effort into finding the best stories for you. If you're enjoying them and want to help us out, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really supports our channel. Now let's start the video. OP starts by saying, Hey, Reddit. I've been lurking here for a while, reading other people's stories about their messed up families, and I finally decided to share mine. I don't know if anyone's going to read this, but honestly, just typing it out feels like a relief. Let me start from the beginning. My name's Ethan, and if I had to describe my family dynamic in one word, it'd be lopsided. Growing up, my parents, Mark and Linda, didn't just have favorites, they had a favorite. My younger brother Ryan was the golden child. He was their pride and joy, the one they doted on, praised, and supported in every possible way. And me? I was the invisible one. The kid who got just enough attention to keep me alive, but not enough to feel like I mattered. Ryan was one of those kids everyone loved to be around. He had that magnetic energy, always smiling, always talking, always charming people. From the moment he could walk, my parents acted like he was some kind of miracle. I, on the other hand, was quieter and more reserved. I liked books, drawing, and tinkering with little projects in my room. I wasn't the type of kid who lit up a room, and I guess that made me less interesting to them. The favoritism started small. When we were little, Ryan got more toys than I did. At first, I thought maybe it was because he was younger and my parents were trying to make him happy. But as we got older, it became clear that this wasn't about his age. It was about him being their star, and me being, well, the other kid. Birthdays were a perfect example. For Ryan's birthdays, my parents went all out. Big parties, expensive gifts, the whole 9 yards. For mine, it was usually just a cake and a happy birthday before they went back to talking about Ryan's latest achievements. One year, I remember asking for a new art set. Instead, they got me a pack of pens from the dollar store. Meanwhile, Ryan got a brand new bike for his birthday that same year. But it wasn't just material things. The emotional neglect hurt even more. When I got straight A's on my report card in middle school, I was so proud. I thought, maybe this will get their attention. I showed my mom, hoping for at least a good job, Ethan. Instead, she glanced at it and said, That's nice, before turning to gush over Ryan's latest basketball game. He wasn't even good at basketball, but somehow, his 2 points in a middle school game were more exciting than my academic achievements. That kind of thing happened all the time. If Ryan had an interest, my parents were all in. They bought him gear, signed him up for lessons, cheered him on at every game. But when I showed interest in something, it was like pulling teeth to get them to care. Once, I told them I wanted to start a small online shop to sell handmade crafts. I'd been saving up for months and needed a little extra money to buy supplies. My dad laughed and said, You don't need to waste your time on that. Focus on something practical. Then, a few months later, Ryan announced he wanted to start a fitness gear brand. My parents immediately opened their wallets. They helped him buy equipment, paid for a professional website, and even hired a graphic designer to create his logo. I remember sitting there watching all this unfold and thinking, why does he get everything handed to him while I have to fight for scraps? By the time I hit high school, I had learned to stop expecting anything from them. Ryan was their world, and I was just the guy who lived in the same house. They were so focused on making sure Ryan succeeded that they didn't notice I was slowly pulling away. Ryan, of course, loved being the center of attention. He had this smug attitude, like he knew he was the favorite and enjoyed rubbing it in my face. If I got a new pair of shoes, he'd laugh and say, Finally upgrading from those hand-me-downs? If I tried to join a conversation at the dinner table, he'd interrupt and steer the topic back to himself. It wasn't just annoying, it was humiliating. I felt like I didn't belong in my own family. My parents encouraged Ryan's behavior by never calling him out. If I complained, they'd say I was being too sensitive or that Ryan was just joking. One incident stands out in my memory. It was during my senior year of high school, and I had entered a regional competition for small business ideas. I spent weeks preparing my pitch, designing prototypes, and perfecting my presentation. When I won first place, I came home bursting with excitement. I told my parents, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd finally be proud of me. My dad's response? That's nice, but have you seen Ryan's new logo? It's so professional looking. My mom didn't even look up from her phone. I went to my room that night and cried, not because I wanted their approval anymore, but because I realized I'd never get it. That was the moment I decided I needed to get out. I couldn't keep living in a house where I was constantly overlooked and undervalued. I started making plans to leave as soon as I graduated. But of course, leaving wasn't going to be easy. My parents had sunk so much money into Ryan's business that there wasn't much left for me. When I told them I wanted to move out and focus on my own small business, they shut me down immediately. My dad said, "We can't spread ourselves too thin. Ryan's business is the future of this family." It was like a slap in the face. They didn't even consider my dreams or ambitions because they were too busy propping up Ryan. That's when I realized I couldn't rely on them. If I wanted a better life, I'd have to build it myself, without their help. So, that's exactly what I did. After the disaster of my high school years and my parents' blatant favoritism, I knew I couldn't stick around much longer. What little faith I had left in them vanished when they poured thousands into Ryan's half-baked business idea while outright dismissing mine. That was the final straw. I decided I wouldn't wait for anyone to hand me an opportunity. I'd make one for myself. But here's the thing. When you've been ignored and underestimated your whole life, you learn to keep your plans quiet. I wasn't about to announce to my parents that I was working on my own business. Not when they were so dismissive of me. So I went underground. My first step was saving every penny I could. I worked part-time jobs after school, tutoring, babysitting, even some freelance work online. I'd lie to my parents and say I was volunteering at the library or studying at a friend's house. They didn't ask many questions, probably because they were too busy hovering over Ryan's every move. With the money I saved, I started teaching myself the basics of running a business. I'd stay up late watching tutorials on marketing, web design, and product sourcing. It wasn't glamorous. I worked out of my tiny bedroom, often hiding my laptop screen when someone walked in. It felt sneaky, but honestly, it was exhilarating. For the first time, I was working towards something that was mine. My idea was simple. I wanted to create custom-designed products, things like mugs, tote bags, and stationery, that appealed to niche audiences. It wasn't groundbreaking, but I believed in it. I researched trends, designed mock-ups, and even found a small supplier willing to work with me on a budget. The first time I made a sale, I thought I was going to cry. It wasn't a lot of money, just $15 for a custom mug, but it felt like I'd won the lottery. Someone out there valued something I created. Meanwhile, Ryan's business was flopping spectacularly. He'd come home from meetings with his team, a couple of his friends who spent more time drinking than working, and complain about how hard it was to get clients. My parents, instead of holding him accountable, just threw more money at the problem. They paid for new equipment, a marketing consultant, and even rented a small office space for him. I overheard my dad once say, "Don't worry, Ryan. These things take time. You're building something big here." It took everything in me not to laugh. Ryan barely lifted a finger, yet my parents treated him like he was the next Steve Jobs. While Ryan was squandering their resources, I was quietly scaling up my little operation. My online shop started gaining traction, thanks to some clever social media marketing and word of mouth. I'd post on forums and groups where my target audience hung out, subtly plugging my products without coming across as pushy. Slowly but surely, orders started coming in. By the time I graduated high school, I was making enough to support myself. I didn't tell my parents, of course. They assumed I was still just figuring things out. When I told them I wanted to move out, they barely blinked. My dad said something like, "Good for you. Maybe you can help Ryan with his business now that you'll have more time." I had to bite my tongue to keep from snapping. Instead, I just smiled and said, "Sure, Dad." What they didn't know was that I wasn't moving out to help Ryan or to stay close to home. I'd already found a small office in another state, far enough that they wouldn't drop by unannounced. It wasn't anything fancy, just a single room with peeling wallpaper and a creaky chair. But it was mine. I signed the lease the day after graduation. For the first time in my life, I felt free. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Setting up my office was one of the happiest moments of my life. I spent days rearranging furniture, setting up my computer, and organizing inventory. It was hard work, and there were moments when I doubted myself, but I loved every second of it. One of the first things I did after moving out was expand my product line. I introduced personalized notebooks and planners, which turned out to be a huge hit. I also started offering custom designs for bulk orders. Think corporate gifts or wedding favors. The business grew faster than I expected. Within a year, I was making enough to hire a part-time assistant to help with packing and shipping. By the second year, I'd upgraded to a larger office and brought on 2 more team members. Meanwhile, my parents still thought I was working a side job and occasionally helping Ryan. They didn't ask for details, and I didn't offer any. It was almost funny how little they cared about what I was actually doing. Ryan, on the other hand, was struggling more than ever. His business had completely tanked. The office my parents rented for him was empty most days, and his website hadn't been updated in months. My dad still tried to prop him up, saying things like, "These are just growing pains." But even he was starting to sound tired. By the time I hit my third year in business, I was making more money than I ever thought possible. I had multiple revenue streams, a loyal customer base, and even a few partnerships with local retailers. I didn't just feel successful, I felt vindicated. All those years of being overlooked and underestimated had led to this moment. My parents had put all their faith in Ryan, and he had let them down. Meanwhile, I had built something from nothing, all on my own. But the funny thing was, they still didn't notice. I'd come home for the occasional holiday dinner, and my dad would always ask, "So Ethan, when are you going to get serious about your career?" I wanted to laugh in his face. Instead, I'd just say, "I'm working on it, Dad," and leave it at that. Little did they know I wasn't just working on it, I was thriving. I was sitting in my office one morning, scrolling through emails and planning out my next product launch when my phone buzzed. I don't usually answer calls from unknown numbers, but something about this one made me pick up. "Hey, Ethan, it's Dad." I froze for a moment. My dad doesn't call me often. Hell, he barely calls me at all unless there's some sort of favor he needs. I leaned back in my chair and said, "Hey, Dad, what's up?" There was an awkward pause before he started talking. "Your brother, well, Ryan's got another business idea, and we're all pitching in to help him get started again. He really wants to get it right this time." I felt my stomach twist. It wasn't anger exactly. It was more like disappointment, that familiar weight I'd been carrying since I was a kid. "Okay," I said cautiously, waiting for the inevitable ask. "Well," Dad continued, "we thought it would be great if you could come home for a family meeting. You know, to brainstorm and help Ryan get this thing off the ground." And there it was, the real reason for the call. I laughed. I couldn't help it. "You want me to help Ryan with another business idea?" "Don't laugh, Ethan. He's learned a lot since the last one didn't pan out, and families should stick together during times like this." I leaned forward, resting my elbow on my desk. "Dad, with all due respect, why would I do that? You've never once asked me for help before." He sighed, and I could almost hear him massaging his temples through the phone. "Look, Ethan, it's not just about Ryan. It's about the family's reputation. People are starting to talk, you know. They're wondering why Ryan can't seem to make anything work. If we all come together, we can help him turn things around and shut those people up." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about family. It wasn't about Ryan. It was about appearances. As always. My parents didn't want to help Ryan because they believed in him. They just didn't want to look bad in front of their friends and neighbors. "I'm sorry, Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've got my own business to run. I don't have time to play cheerleader for Ryan." That's when the guilt trip started. My dad launched into a monologue about how much they'd sacrificed for us, how hard it was to raise two boys, and how I should be grateful for everything they'd done. I stayed silent, letting him ramble. When he finally ran out of steam, I said, "I'm not coming home, Dad. I've got too much on my plate." The line went quiet for a moment, and then he said, "If you don't come, we'll stop supporting you financially." I almost laughed again. "Dad, I haven't needed your money in years. Stop pretending like you've been supporting me." There was a long pause. "What's that supposed to mean?" It was petty, but I couldn't resist. "It means I've been running my own business for the past few years. I'm doing fine without your help." I could hear the disbelief in his voice. "You're joking." "I'm not. I've got a thriving business, Dad. I'm making more than enough to take care of myself. So no, I won't be coming home to help Ryan." There was a long silence, and then he hung up without another word. I thought that was the end of it, but of course it wasn't. The next day, my mom called. "Ethan, sweetheart, we need to talk." Her voice was soft, almost pleading, but I knew better than to fall for it. "What do you need, Mom?" She sighed dramatically. "It's about Ryan. He's been so stressed lately, and your father and I are worried about him. We think it would mean a lot to him if you came home and supported him. He's your brother, after all." I gritted my teeth. "Mom, I'm not coming home. I have my own life, my own business. Ryan's problems aren't my responsibility." "But we're a family," she said, her voice breaking like she was on the verge of tears. "You can't just turn your back on us." "Mom, I didn't turn my back on you. You turned your back on me a long time ago. I'm not going to drop everything just because Ryan needs another bailout." She sniffled, but I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy. For years, I'd craved their approval, their attention, their support. Now that I didn't need any of those things, they suddenly wanted me to play the role of the perfect son. "Ethan," she said, her voice steadier now, "we just want what's best for everyone. Can't you see that?" "No, Mom," I said firmly. "You want what's best for Ryan. You always have. I'm done being second place in this family." I hung up before she could respond. Over the next week, the calls kept coming. My dad left angry voicemails, accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful. My mom sent me long texts about the importance of family and how I was breaking her heart. I ignored them all. But then, something unexpected happened. One of my friends from high school reached out and said my dad had been asking around about me. Apparently, he'd gone to the local college I was supposed to be attending and tried to pull my records. When they told him I wasn't a student there, he completely lost it. I could only imagine the look on his face when he realized I'd been lying to him for years. A few days later, I got another call from my dad. This time, he was furious. "What the hell have you been doing with all the money we sent you for tuition?" I couldn't hold back my laughter. "I used it to build my business, Dad. Thanks for the seed funding." "You lied to us!" he shouted. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" "For who?" I shot back. "You, Ryan? Because I'm doing just fine." He tried to lecture me about trust and respect, but I cut him off. "You want to talk about trust? Respect? Where was that when I needed it? When I was busting my ass to succeed and you couldn't even bother to notice?" He hung up on me again. That's where things stand now. My parents are furious. Ryan's probably sulking, and I'm just sitting here, finally feeling free. I thought the chaos would die down after I dropped the truth bomb on my dad about my business and my independence. But I was wrong. If anything, it stirred up a bigger storm. A few days after the phone call, my mom showed up at my office. Yes, she showed up, unannounced and uninvited. It was late in the afternoon, and I was wrapping up a meeting with one of my team members when the receptionist poked her head into my office and said, Ethan, there's a woman here asking for you. She says she's your mom?" I was stunned for a second. My mom had never taken any real interest in my life, so to have her standing outside my office was surreal. I told the receptionist to let her in, mostly because I didn't want her making a scene in the lobby. Mom walked in, looking around like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "This is nice," she said, her voice laced with surprise. "Thanks," I said flatly, not bothering to mask my annoyance. "What are you doing here, Mom?" She sighed dramatically, like this was all some big inconvenience for her. "I wanted to talk to you face to face. You've been avoiding my calls, and your father and I are worried about you." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "You're worried about me? Since when?" "Don't be like that, Ethan," she said, her tone shifting to one of forced sweetness. "We're family. Families argue sometimes, but we need to stick together." I could feel my patience thinning. "Is that why you're here? To guilt trip me into coming home and playing happy family?" Her face fell for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "No, I'm here because we want to make things right. Your father and I talked about it, and we realized we might have been too focused on Ryan over the years. We want to make up for it." I didn't believe her for a second. Make up for it? How exactly? By pretending the last 20-something years didn't happen? Her eyes darted around the room, avoiding my gaze. We want to support you now, Ethan. You've obviously done well for yourself, and we're proud of you." I scoffed. "Proud? You didn't even know what I was doing until a week ago. You didn't care when I needed you, and now you suddenly want to act like supportive parents? Why? Because Ryan's business failed, and you need someone to bail you out?" Her face flushed red. "That's not fair. We've always cared about you." "Stop!" I interrupted, my voice sharp. "Let's not rewrite history. You came here because you're desperate, not because you care. So why don't you drop the act and tell me what you really want?" She hesitated, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her purse. Finally, she said, "Your father and I are in a bit of a financial bind. Ryan's last venture cost us more than we expected, and, well, we were hoping you could lend us some money to get back on our feet." I laughed bitterly. "Of course. It always comes back to money." "It's not just about money," she said quickly. "We want to rebuild our relationship with you too. This could be a fresh start for all of us." I stared at her, trying to decide if she actually believed what she was saying, or if she was just trying to manipulate me. "You spent years ignoring me, dismissing me, and now you want a fresh start because you're broke? That's not how this works, Mom. I'm not your safety net." Her expression hardened. "Ethan, we're your parents. We've done so much for you over the years." "No, you did so much for Ryan," I snapped. "Don't sit here and pretend you were some kind of supportive parents when you couldn't even bother to ask how I was doing most of the time. I don't owe you anything." She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You're being selfish. We're still your family, whether you like it or not. And you were my family. But you treated me like I didn't exist," I shot back. "Now, if you don't mind, I have work to do." She left without another word, slamming the door behind her. I thought that was the end of it. But of course my parents weren't done. A few days later, I got another surprise visitor. Ryan. He showed up at my office looking like a mess, unshaven, disheveled, and desperate. I almost didn't recognize him. "Ethan," he said as he walked in, "can we talk?" I sighed, leaning against my desk. What do you want, Ryan? He sat down heavily, running a hand through his hair. Look, man, I know things haven't been great between us, but I really need your help right now. I raised an eyebrow. You need my help? That's a first. He flinched but pressed on. I screwed up, okay? Thought I could handle everything, but I couldn't. And now Mom and Dad are blaming me for all their problems. They're saying it's my fault the business failed, my fault they're broke. Isn't it? I asked bluntly. He looked at me, hurt, flashing in his eyes. I didn't mean for things to turn out this way. I thought I could make them proud, you know? But now, they're turning on me, and I don't know what to do. I folded my arms, staring at him. So you came to me because what? You think I can fix everything? I don't know, he admitted, his voice breaking. I need someone to have my back. Please, Ethan. I shook my head. You've got some nerve coming to me after everything. You bullied me, Ryan. You treated me like crap while Mom and Dad cheered you on. And now you want me to save you? I'm sorry, he said quietly. I was an idiot back then. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. Too little, too late, I said firmly. I've moved on, Ryan. I built a life for myself without any of you. I'm not going to let you drag me back into the mess you created. He sat there for a moment. His shoulders slumped before standing up. I guess I deserve that, he said. But for what it's worth, I really am sorry. I didn't say anything as he walked out the door. Since then, I haven't heard from any of them. My phone's been blissfully silent, and I've been focusing on my business and my life. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm in control. I thought I'd seen it all after my parents and Ryan tried to guilt-trip me into helping them. I thought I could finally put all their drama behind me and move forward with my life. But life, as it turns out, has a funny way of throwing one last curveball when you least expect it. About a month after Ryan's desperate visit, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter. I can't remember the last time anyone had written to me, so I was intrigued enough to open it. The handwriting was familiar. My mom's. The letter was long, rambling, and honestly hard to read in some places because of the smudges where tears had clearly hit the page. She started with the usual, how she and my dad missed me, how they regretted everything that had happened, and how much they loved me. But then it took a turn. Apparently, things at home had gotten even worse. The house they'd lived in for decades was gone. My parents had over-leveraged everything they had to fund Ryan's businesses. And when the last one failed, they couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments. They'd been evicted a few weeks ago and were now living in a tiny apartment on the outskirts of town. Ryan, the golden child, had cut and run. He'd taken what little money he had left and moved in with a friend 2 states over. He wasn't answering their calls, and my parents were furious. My mom wrote that she couldn't believe Ryan would abandon them after everything they'd done for him. It was ironic, really. They had spent their entire lives bending over backward for Ryan, showering him with love, support, and resources, only for him to leave them high and dry when things got tough. Meanwhile, the son they'd ignored, the one they dismissed as too sensitive or not ambitious enough, was the only one still standing. The letter ended with a plea. My mom begged me to come back, to forgive them, and to help them rebuild their lives. She said they didn't have anyone else to turn to, that they'd learned their lesson, and wanted to make things right. I put the letter down and sat in silence for a long time. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to be the bigger person, to go back and try to fix what was left of our family. After all, they were still my parents. And despite everything they'd done, or hadn't done, I couldn't completely shut off the part of me that craved their love and acceptance. But then I thought about all the years I spent waiting for them to care about me. All the birthdays and holidays where I was an afterthought. All the times they made it clear that Ryan was their priority, and I was just the background character in their perfect little family narrative. I couldn't go back. A few weeks after I got the letter, I heard from my aunt, the only extended family member I still kept in touch with. She called me out of the blue, her voice low and hesitant. Ethan, I don't know if you've heard, but your parents are in real trouble. I figured, I said, not bothering to hide my lack of sympathy. They lost the house, she continued. But it's worse than that. Mark, your dad, he had a big argument with one of his old clients, and it's blown up into a lawsuit. They're being sued for damages, and if they lose, they'll have nothing left. I rubbed my temples. What do you want me to do about it? She hesitated. I'm not saying you owe them anything, Ethan. God knows they've treated you terribly. But they're your parents. I just thought you should know. I thanked her for letting me know and hung up. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about everything. My parents had made so many bad decisions, so many mistakes, but at the end of the day, they were still human. Flawed, selfish, and short-sighted. Sure, but human nonetheless. I wasn't going to swoop in and save them. I wasn't going to pour my hard-earned money into their endless pit of bad choices. But I decided I could give them one thing: closure. I called my mom the next day. She picked up on the first ring, her voice shaky and emotional. "Ethan, is that you?" "It's me," I said. "Oh, thank God," she whispered. "I've been praying you'd call. How are you? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I just wanted to talk." She started crying, real guttural sobs that made me feel uncomfortable. After a few moments, she composed herself enough to speak. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. For everything. For how we treated you. You didn't deserve that. None of it." "I know I didn't," I said. "And I appreciate the apology, but it doesn't change what happened." She sniffled. "I know, I don't know how to fix this." "You can't fix it," I said bluntly. "It's too late for that. But you can learn from it. Maybe someday we can have a relationship, but it's going to take time. And it's going to take real effort from you and Dad. We're willing to do whatever it takes," she said quickly. "We'll prove it to you, Ethan. I promise." I didn't respond right away. I knew better than to put too much stock in her promises. "Take care of yourselves," I said finally. "That's all I can say right now." We hung up, and I felt an odd sense of peace. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was in control of my relationship with my family. Final update. Hey Reddit, it's me again. I know I said I was done with my parents and their drama, but life has a way of complicating things. I've been sitting with everything for the past few months, and I realized something. No matter how much they've hurt me, they're still my parents. That doesn't mean I'm forgiving everything overnight, or pretending it didn't happen. It just means that I couldn't shake the thought of them struggling, homeless, and hopeless. As much as I wanted to stay detached, the idea of walking away entirely started to feel wrong. So, after a lot of internal debate, I decided to step in, not to fix their lives, but to give them a fighting chance to fix it themselves. I made one thing clear to myself. This wasn't about being the hero or proving a point. This was about setting boundaries and doing what I felt was right. A few days ago, I drove to the tiny apartment my parents had moved into after losing the house. I hadn't told them I was coming, and I wasn't sure what to expect. When I knocked on the door, my mom answered. She looked older than I remembered, more worn down. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Ethan," she whispered. "You came." "Yeah," I said, stepping inside. The apartment was small, cluttered, and depressing. My dad was sitting on the couch, flipping through a stack of papers. He looked up when he heard my voice. "Ethan," he said gruffly, standing up. "What are you doing here?" I looked between the two of them and took a deep breath. "I'm here because I've been thinking about everything, and I've decided I want to help. Not because I owe you anything, but because I want to." My dad's face twisted in confusion, while my mom's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, you don't have to do this," she said. "We don't deserve it." "You're right," I said bluntly. "You don't, but that's not the point. I'm not here to rehash the past. I'm here to give you a chance to get back on your feet. That's it. No strings attached, no guilt trips. Just a chance." My dad sat back down heavily, running a hand through his hair. "How?" he asked after a long silence. "I'll help cover your immediate debts, rent, basic bills, stuff like that, but only temporarily," I explained. "And I'll help you figure out a plan to get back on track. But that's it. The rest is on you." They both nodded, stunned into silence. Over the next few days, I sat down with them and went through their finances. It was worse than I thought. They were drowning in credit card debt, overdue bills, and the fallout from my dad's lawsuit. Ryan's failed businesses had left them with nothing but broken promises and unpaid loans. I helped them set up a budget, arranged for some of their smaller debts to be consolidated, and even paid a couple of urgent bills to keep the lights on. It wasn't easy seeing how far they'd fallen, but I kept reminding myself that this was a temporary arrangement. There were a few tense moments, of course. My dad had a hard time swallowing his pride, and my mom kept trying to apologize for everything. I told her that apologies were fine, but what I really needed was for them to take responsibility for their lives moving forward. "This is the last time I'm doing this," I said firmly. "After this, you're on your own." They both nodded, and for once, I believed they understood. The hardest part was facing my own emotions. Every time I handed them money, or sat down to help them figure out a problem, a part of me wondered if I was being stupid, if I was setting myself up to be taken advantage of again. But another part of me felt like I was finally closing the chapter on years of pain and resentment. Helping them wasn't about fixing the past, it was about proving to myself that I could rise above it. It's been a week since I stepped in, and so far things seem to be moving in the right direction. My parents have started looking for part-time jobs, and they're taking the budgeting seriously. I even set up an online bill pay system for them to make things easier. I'm not saying everything's perfect now. There's still a lot of history between us, and it's going to take a long time to rebuild trust. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're moving forward instead of just spinning in circles. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm also keeping my boundaries firmly in place. If they slip back into old habits, I'll walk away again. No hesitation. But for now, I'm willing to give them this one last chance. Thanks for sticking with me, Reddit. I'll let you know how it goes. Fingers crossed.